I guess I'm standing between you all and lunch and a break as well. So I hope that this is informative for you all. I'm excited to be here. I've been with the National Pork Board for just about 8 months now, but as Joyce said, I have a lot of experience in consumer goods. I've sat in the basement of P&G doing neuroscience monitoring on consumers and how they think or what consumers are thinking when they see television ads or brand logos. I've rebranded Kroger's private label, thinking about what consumers were really looking for. And so you'll probably hear me talk about mom, and I'll use mom in quotes because it's a lot easier to say mom than caregiver. But I really am interested in what happens in the 6 inches between people's ears. You know, we can monitor the inputs. All the information that you provide to your clients and to the consumers are inputs. We can monitor the outputs. What are they purchasing? The POS data, everything from the retail side, we can monitor that. The thing that we don't know is, what's that translation from the input to the output? And I think that's where we have to work to understand. We work to try different strategies and see how people respond and what we can do to ensure that we're effectively communicating truth and accuracy to consumers. So today, what we'll be talking about is dinner at home in America. We'll highlight a lot of the trends, what consumers are talking about, but also looking not just at the research that we did, but we've done some social listening exercises. When we talk about social listening, we worked with some agencies where they cast a net over the internet and all the social media platforms and looking for themes that we've identified. What are consumers talking about from a social side? Because we found that consumers are more truthful through the internet than they are with their own spouses. And that's actual research that's been done. Now, I will say I don't have the p-value and things like that. Now, as a mathematician, I would love to have all that. And I love what Annette just talked about as far as the truth in numbers. I wrote my undergrad thesis on the use of accurate data versus percentages and what that difference means for consumers, because people will say, yeah, 62% is great, but if it's only X number, it is an interesting story. But then we'll also talk about some of getting back to this, we'll talk about some of the key takeaways, but also what are some of the other research things that the Pork Board has done, and how can we continue to work with you all as a phenomenal organization and individuals to further education for consumers. I think no one would be surprised to know that the way that America and Americans and consumers live, shop, and eat has changed dramatically. You look at the phone and the power of the phone, and I think of my kids, I refer to them as the examples, and they never know that I do this. But a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old, my son's ready to just order Uber Eats and this and that and the other, and he's like, I never have to leave the house. I was like, yes, you do. You have to get a job at some point and leave the house. But the way that we're all approaching this, technology has really been very pervasive in how we're approaching, how we're shopping, how we're living. Suddenly we're able to be busier than ever before because we don't have to spend 2 hours or an hour a week in the grocery store. We can pull up on the way home from work, have it dropped in the back of our car, hope that the 17-year-old that came in after school that really had a frustrating day picked the right things that we wanted and things like that. There's just a lot of technology that's being used. I know my neighbor had 2 young children, and he would travel to visit different family members throughout the year, and Christmas time was a big element. He would have Amazon ship them cases of diapers, so he never had to go to the grocery store there because he knew what he wanted. And so that's the way consumers are looking at how they're shopping. They're able to look at all these materials and not get it the traditional way of being in the store. I think as you talk to, I know a lot of you all are retail dietitians as well as your own private practice, If consumers aren't in the stores, are they really able to convey what they're looking for in a virtual technology era? So the food revolution, it's pretty darn big. You know, the new ways to buy, we already talked about the click and collect type methodology. $8.2 billion industry there. 63% of CPG omnichannel growth is driven by e-commerce. Up in Chicago, I was up there maybe 6-7 weeks ago when we were touring some stores. Amazon Go, who's heard of Amazon Go as a store? Yeah, you walk in, it's a convenience store. It's maybe half of this room. We'll call it half of the room. You walk in, there are 3 store associates in the entire store. You actually have the app that you scan at the beginning that's linked to your Amazon account. And as you go through the store, you pull something off the shelf. You don't have to scan it or anything else. It knows that you picked that up, linked it to your Amazon account. So as soon as you walk out the door, it's automatically charged to your Amazon account. Now the scary thing is, you look up above and there are cameras and just electronics all over the place. But then when you leave the store, about 10 minutes later, you get not just your receipt, but you get a monitoring or a text that says, you were in the store for 15 minutes, you spent this amount of time near this area, so that you know how you're shopping. It's a little Big Brother-ish. But you think about how that, but what is that technology going to mean in this food revolution that we're in? 9 fewer shop trips annually for groceries. And yet they're spending more, and consumers are spending more per trip. So the average dollars are there. But what happens when you're in the store 9 fewer times? You're having less impact. I'll use retail dietitian as an example. You have 9 less chances to interact with the consumer. So how do we ensure that we have that personal touch as well? 1/5 of millennials are Hispanics. 70% of Hispanics are under the age of 40. It's going to be one of the biggest growth areas, and we'll talk about some of the studies that the National Pork Board has done on the Latino and Hispanic consumer. Understanding that they are going to have longevity in the marketplace, the purchasing power, Latinos and Hispanic consumers, $95 billion of consumer goods are purchased by that group. Imagine what that's going to look like as we continue to, I think I lost the mic somewhere. Maybe. Yep, that's gone. Dead battery. There you go. I thought you guys were just cutting me off saying, yeah, that's the But think about that buying power that those Latino and Hispanic consumers are going to have. More households, again, my son is 17, my daughter is 13, more consumers in the Gen Z and beyond generations are going to look at as a multicultural household to begin with. It's not as easy to separate out those from a demographic standpoint. And then we've already talked about the smartphone and how important that is. I joked with my wife, I said it would be great one day to be able to go back to the flip phone. And she said, how could you ever release the smartphone from your hand? I said, you'd have to probably cut my hand off first, but it would be nice. So and we've heard a lot this morning about different data types and such, but National Pork Board has really looked to bring together as much data as possible. So we're working with Nielsen and IRI on the retail POS elements. We're working with Numerator on panel data, and when I say that, it's actually consumers that report what they buy. And so they take their receipts and they'll say, here's what I bought, where, when, etc. We'll work with Mintel on industry insights and their large studies. Data Essentials, which helps with the food service industry, because it's not just the grocery stores that we have to think about. We have to think about the food service industry as well. And food service is becoming pervasive within grocery as well. You walk into to Walmart stores and you have a Subway, a McDonald's, everything up front, and then you go over to the deli and they have a whole food service area as well. you get into NPD and some of their in and out of home consumption that we'll speak about, but then custom research. So CNR Research is a research firm that we've worked with and partnered with to really bring some of these insights to life. So we're looking across the board. We don't want to just take one data point and say this is true. We really want to look at the comprehensive nature of consumers. Because what they say in a custom research study may not be what they buy. And that's why we have to think about what they do and how they work. So our research plan really had a phased approach. We looked at user and category discovery because we said, well, of course, we want to help support the pork producers, but we want to understand what consumers are buying. What are the challenges that consumers have? And so we looked at the category dynamics. We conducted focus groups. We did some online immersion communities where consumers over the course of a couple weeks had to do food diaries, they had to do homework assignments, they had to do videos of how they cooked, really understanding, again, that why of what they were doing. We did some surveys both for consumers and within with retailers and other food purveyors. And then we've done some activation workshops with our team where we're able to take some of this data and say, how are we going to turn this? And when I say our team, it's not just marketers sitting around the table. We work to bring together producers, packers, dietitians, really try and bring that task force element together to activate on this. So we kind of talked about the what and the who and the why, and we're on this journey, and we continue to cycle back because we've been in this growth phase with the strategies. But as we begin to implement the strategies, if something isn't working or more questions come up, we start back at the what. And that's where we're starting with a lot of things this year as well. As we've launched a lot of these studies, we're coming up with more questions. And so we're starting the process again in a deeper, more meaningful way. So when we talk about some of the approach that we did, 10,000 interviews. It's a heck of a lot of people that we talked to over the course of about a year. Layering that on with consumer demographics, looking at the data from receipts. When we think about dinner at home in America, what we found was that there really were 9 dinner occasions. That centered on who's at the table, how often do these occasions occur, and then what are some of the top needs. Now, when we're talking about occasions, an occasion is not a person. Any one person may fit into multiple occasions during the day, may fit into multiple occasions during the week. So as we talk about the findings, just keep that in mind that it's not a consumer segmentation, it's an occasion segmentation that we came up with. It's pretty true. I know my wife and I, we're both busy. We don't want to think. We're at the end of the day, we're tired. And I think all of us probably face that. We don't want to think too hard about what's for dinner. So it has to be easy, quick, simple. Well, it's something that everybody wants to eat. And this is where I'll use the term mom. I was in a focus group and a mother told me, I want to make sure that when I say, how was everything, I don't get it was okay. That's disappointing for mom. Mom wants to be the hero at the end of the day, or dad, or I say, again, caregiver. You don't want to just have you don't want to be the family that provides stuff for the bake sale and this is the only thing of cookies that doesn't sell, right? So how do we help folks get recipes, get information, get products into their home that folks will eat? They don't want to require a lot of thought. We're talking about 5 to 10 ingredients. I know my wife will look at things and say, I'm okay with 15 ingredients if I have 5 or 7 of them already in the house because it's easy. But she doesn't want to deal with 15 new ingredients. Maybe on the weekends she will because it's a little bit more time. Something that's a go-to, but then it's also what fits into your budget. I think Annette made some great comments of Consumers today, when you're looking at organic produce, if that's what they're saying, I need to buy, if I can't afford it, they weren't buying produce. And we know that, again, I work for the pork producers. We have to think about pork, certainly, but we all recognize the need for a balanced diet. You can't eat pork 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. You need to have that balance in your plate, but what fits within that budget, and how can you look at that? So when we looked at what motivations or what attitudes had influence, we really found that health, here we have it listed as a third tier motivator, because health doesn't become a predominant day in, day out thought, but health becomes an actual base for overall eating. And we'll talk about that in some of the need states. So on a day in and day out where I'm trying to get something on the table, health doesn't become always the predominant factor. It's a lot of the ease and simplicity, the quick, the flavorful, cost and stuff also comes into play, but it's a little bit of a second tier. So as we think about that, how do we have health that's a pervasive theme across the board become part of that daily interaction from an ease and simplicity standpoint? Because if the recipe and the meal is easy to use and it's healthy, added bonus. So we need to help figure out what consumers are looking for from that standpoint. From a social listening standpoint, I think we'd be a little bit remiss if we didn't talk about some of the things that are out there. So over the last 19 months, I don't think this would be surprising to anyone. Vegan and keto diets are the things that people are talking about because they're trusting social media for accuracy. Or I saw X product on Shark Tank that's going to help me do this in my diet. I would venture to say that this audience is probably saying, yeah, it's more about the education than just about this newfangled product that you can purchase. When we look at sustainability of diets, though, I think we all would agree it's not easy to sustain a diet. We heard earlier, folks that are on a keto diet, for instance, may drop quick weight, but is that long lasting? And it's all about, some of the consumers that we've talked about, they say that they always fail. They love food. So even on no carb diets, they can gain weight because they just love food. So how do we talk to consumers about that balance, about that need to have good information, good, flavorful, quick, healthy meals in their home? And when folks are talking about this kind of stuff online, are they willing to share that with nutritionists, dietitians, doctors, other folks that can help them along their journey? It's always going to be a challenge. So connecting with food, there's permission that's necessary for folks to ingest food. Has to be quality, has to be food safe. Sustainability and animal welfare become very important, especially as we talk about pork and other animal agriculture areas. That's the baseline, that's table stakes. If we don't have some of these things, we're not even thinking about it. But then it gets into the motivation. How do we start to go beyond just, yes, this is food safe, and we start to bring in the emotional, more of an emotional story for nutrition, health, vitality. I want to feel good to hang out with my 17-year-old son with how busy he is. But if I don't have good food in me and I'm not living a healthy lifestyle, I'm not going to be able to do that. What's that motivation? And then we get into the relevance. You get into new products. Now, I will say a lot of new products come out and they have all these newfangled claims, but at the end of the day, having just good, wholesome food at home is not a bad thing at all. That's when my wife says, what do you want for dinner? And we make a great meal all together. Those are the meals that we're all enjoying, a lot more than the next box of macaroni and cheese that has SpongeBob as a shape and things. And that probably dates me as far as what shapes are out there and things. And it shows that I'm trying not to shop the center store as much or as often. But then food really provides that connection. When you sit down, and I use weekend meals a lot because with how busy our family is, when we can all sit together around a dinner table, and my daughter doesn't have her phone or a book out, my son doesn't have his earbuds in watching YouTube and everything, we're able to connect at a different level and have different conversations. And you're able to learn a lot more. And so how do we center our healthy lifestyle diet, not just on food and nutrients, but there's a matter of the balance and the mental health aspect that can really come in as well. And finally, it's all about the aspect of love and that care, both for each other, but then for our own bodies, for our own health, but then also for society and for those that are around us. So if we can figure out how to integrate in, we go from the rational up to the emotional, and really have that tie for messaging in what we do. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about pork, of course. And pork is very important. 97% of U.S. households bought pork last year. 79% bought both fresh and processed pork. And so when we're talking about fresh pork, chops, loins, roasts, etc., processed as a broad category, sausage, pepperoni, etc. And when we think about the basket size, folks that put pork in their basket actually are more valuable than folks that just put beef or chicken in their basket as well, because they're tending to buy more produce, more other products that go into the basket. So pork is important to a lot of folks, both from a retail standpoint, but then it's just part of our ingrained lifestyle. I spent the last 2 weeks with consumers, and we'll ask them, what pork do you eat? And they're like, maybe we'll grill a pork chop or what have you, but then when we look in the refrigerator, they have the ham, they have all these other products in their refrigerator that they go, oh, well, I don't think about that as pork, quote unquote. But it is, and that's where pork has a lot of integration into people's lifestyles every day. But like I said, they're not spending all their fresh protein dollars on pork. You know, they're spreading it out quite a bit, which is, again, is important because we want to have that balance. But are we losing those dollars to other areas? So some of the perceptions that really impact purchase interest. 50% of consumers say that pork is hard to cook. 46% of consumers say pork is unhealthy. When we're talking about unhealthy, we're talking about being fatty, high in cholesterol, high in sodium, all these nutrient facts that, as Joyce mentioned, we've worked as an industry to make sure that we have leaner, good tasting product that compares very favorably from a protein and nutrition standpoint to other lean proteins. So how do we break through some of these barriers? Blandness, not featured in recipes I read. You know, how can they insert pork into their favorite recipe? My son likes to try things. I feel very blessed that he likes to try cooking. My wife wishes that he would clean up after himself, and I think that's for any 17-year-old. But he actually took a pork chop, cooked the pork chop to 145 degrees because he got the thermometer out, which again, I was shocked by. But he cut it up and then put it into an Alfredo. So it was pork Alfredo, because he said, I was sick of chicken, you know, because he just ate it that often. He's like, it was phenomenal for him because he did it himself, number one. but he said, I was able to try X, Y, and Z to make it flavorful and all that. So how do we take some of those learnings and really break through some of these barriers and these roadblocks that may exist for consumers? So as I mentioned, we have the nine dinner occasions, and the Dinner at Home in America report and all of our thought leadership studies can be found out on the National Pork Board website, pork.org. It's under Insights, and you can download the entire report. I can read through this entire slide, but you can see that we have the 9 dinner occasions. We talk about the percent of those occasions, some of the key needs, but then what we'll do, we'll dig into a couple of these and really diagnose, provide some diagnostics around a couple of these occasions. And again, within the study itself, you can find the detail. So when we talk about quick, healthy adult meals, as an example, this is for adults who wonder what to eat when they get home from work. They want something that's fresh, healthy protein, something that's on hand. And so how do we make sure that we have the right products, and whether it be proteins, produce, etc., on hand? Typically, this type of occasion is urban or suburban women. The family's more likely to earn about $100,000 or more a year, and it's a small gathering, 1 to 3 people. Typically, you're looking at smaller portions, ease of cooking messaging. So if it is something new that they see, they have that messaging that's easy to cook or something easy to follow. And opportunities at retail, what pairs well together? You know, if you have a broccoli and pork recipe, or a zucchini and pork recipe, but you're allergic to one of the produce elements, what can be substituted in and out with ease? And giving some of those recommendations. Alternatively, thinking about the healthy family favorite type meals. You're thinking about suburban and rural areas. This involves teenagers, so this is where my family fits in considerably. It's something foods that everybody will happily eat, and I think some of it for our family at least. My son will eat dinner 1, dinner 2, and dinner 3. He's an athlete, and the amount of food that he has to consume, I don't know. I just don't know where it goes. He must have hollow legs or something. But if you cook something and have leftovers, and the leftovers just sit there, is it something that everybody enjoyed? Maybe they did the first day, but the leftover aspect. This could be a fun and nice way to celebrate a special occasion. That could be as simple as a birthday, something good happened at school, an award, etc. So, what are some of the call-outs that we can have on packaging? I was in San Diego 2 weeks ago. We were in a Hispanic market, and they had a chicken, pork, and beef product that was pre-seasoned, each in their own packages, but then overwrapped all together. It was, I want to say, $10.99 or $9.99 for 3 pounds of meat. And it was their Fiesta Taco Kit, because not everybody always likes just pork or chicken or beef. Give it a little bit of each, and then you buy that, you got free tortillas. So they're giving all the ways to prepare it. They're giving the seasonings ready to go, but at the same time, when I talked to the meat manager that put these together, he said, we make sure that we follow some nutrition guidelines when we're putting it together, not too much sodium, etc. in the pre-season, because that's, again, a perception that consumers have, that things may have too much of a certain ingredient. And then we have the opportunity to really kind of, as I said, have the ability for pork to work beyond just a chop or a loin. How does that compare with a chicken recipe? How do you try it a little bit differently? And then the third one that we wanted to talk about a little bit was this idea of exploring new flavors. Again, healthy, something outside the everyday, budget friendly. And I know our family is willing to try things as long as we're not going to spend so much more on this. And what happens if we don't like it? How do we try it a little bit at a time, or try new flavors? Or if my son's willing to cook, it's like, yes, take the responsibility off of us. You cook, we'll give you the money. Not a big deal. So this typically involves 3 to 4 people, involves children 10 or younger, skew male. They're looking for those pre-season products, and I won't even say just pre-season, but pre-conditioned products to a degree. And I saw this for the first time in Atlanta last week. Now I've seen ads for it every day, just about. Chicken breasts that are pre-cut up, but the packaging, if you look at it, it's in the shape of a chicken breast, and all the chicken chunks are placed in the package itself. So you can see that you're getting a whole chicken breast, but it's pre-cut up, so it saves that chopping time. So you're able just to put it right into the pan or grill or whatever you may be looking for. So some of the opportunities here with the new flavors, it's the leaner cuts, pork tenderloin, and it's the ease of use and affordability. You can go a lot further. It's not just a one meal and done, but it's cook once, eat twice type solution. You think about that tenderloin, one pan meal, but you can take off some of that pork for the next night, so it's all ready to go. Or it becomes a pulled pork, and you can use it in tacos one night, huevos rancheros the next day, etc. So these are the types of, within the study itself, each of the 9 occasions actually has an anatomy built out like this. So as you dig deeper into it, if there's interest, you can really understand what consumers are looking for on each of those occasions. So at the end of the day, it becomes about education. Innovation from the standpoint of how are we thinking differently? Innovation doesn't always have to be the next new product out there. How are we thinking differently? How are we communicating differently to consumers with their needs? How are we addressing some of those things? But then also, how are we activating this, whether it be in private practice, whether it be in retail environments? How are we activating against this information so that consumers really can make a difference? I know I'll sit there and I'll read things in a day in, day out basis, and I'll sit there and go, this would be great, and then it never sticks with me for whatever reason. And it could be, I don't believe it, I don't have the right tools, etc. So we have to think about it as professionals. How are we helping consumers activate against this in their daily lives? Because if we can give the toolbox to do it, it becomes a lot easier. So we've already really talked about that, simple and versatile meal solutions, etc. And I want to provide some examples of how we've worked with retailers and other organizations to try and bring some of this to life. As I mentioned, the health-led dinner occasions and how we can balance some of this in what we do has to come through in our messaging as well. So we worked with some of our partners, and so Clemens Food Group, they took this research, Dinner at Home in America, they looked at all the products that they had, and they started to say, okay, if you have these 9 occasions, what products match up with these occasions? And so in some of their food sets for their stores and for retail partners, they said, let's package this all together. Let's provide a meal solution, not meal kit, but a meal solution for consumers. What fits with families in a hurry versus a healthy adult meal versus something to keep in the fridge. But then we've also worked to ensure, so this is up in the Northeast, as far as some labels that we've done with the Ahold Group, talking about juicy and tender and flavorful at 145 degrees. So moving beyond just we have to cook pork until it's leathery and things, but it's safe at 145 degrees with the 3-minute rest. Everyone cooks beef at different temperatures. Some people like it well done. My mom was renowned for well done steak. That was, and it wasn't just steak, it was everything. But as I've grown up, it's how do we really balance some of that information, and having it unpacked is one way that we really worked at it. We've also done things with leading retailers, and so we just did a big pork campaign with Kroger, 2,800 stores, where there was some couponing that was included, but the message was all about healthy eating with fresh pork, and talking about the message of that healthy eating. And we really worked on the nutritional value of pork, and it goes beyond just pork. You can do this with a lot of other proteins as well. And a Price Chopper, again, this is up in the Northeast, they have a kiosk at the front of the store. Excuse me. They have a kiosk at the front of the store. You take your loyalty card, you scan it, and you'll get $1 off of this or 50 cents off of that. And traditionally, that's the way a lot of vendor partners have worked with retailers. Give me the cents off, give me the dollars, and we'll promote it. What we tried to do, we said, we need to get into the education side. Help consumers understand what to do, so we provided 2 recipes, or information, I should say. How to roast a ham, how to bake a pork chop. What we saw, and retailers love this, 550% increase versus the year prior when we ran the program, because consumers knew what to do. After the program finished and they didn't have as much product on the shelf, store managers were asking for more product because consumers were looking for it again. So we can change consumer mindset with a little bit of information. Now, do they appreciate a cents off coupon? Sure, but education is what they're needing, and you see that in stores today. You have various price points for different brands of protein. People are willing to buy in a lot of different areas, but if you can help educate them in what they want, we're able to really further the message. National Grocers is another example. I've been working with Annette and such. And we launched this with independent grocers, where we actually have tools that we put together for meal solutions that were launched in September. And this was something that resides for the store members. Sorry. 1,500 members, about 8,000 store locations. They were given recipe cards, weekly meal planners, signage, overhead intercom messages, social media posts. Everything was pre-done for them, so they had to purchase the kit. I want to say it's for $200. Everything had all the nutrition elements already built in. We had demo guides. We gave them exact instructions of how to do things. So it was easy, plug and play type elements. And with that, we've seen good response already. You know, we're continuing to work with those independent grocers, because of Kroger or large retailers, a lot of times have their own programs that we can just plug into. Independents don't have that same ability. So how can we work with that group? Because as you're working with clients, they may not be shopping at the traditional grocery stores. They may be going to some of these independent retailers. So how can we ensure that we're getting good messaging out there? I think we'd all say that the next generation is something that we have to think about. And so we said, how do we impact those sixth graders through 12th graders? My kids, they both taken family consumer science classes. My daughter's taking it right now, but only about one in three students actually take that class in their schools anymore. So they don't have the knowledge of what's out there. And so what we did, this year we worked with a group called Young Minds Inspired that focuses in on, we started with the FACS teachers for 6 through 12, about 14,000 teachers, and provided lesson plans for them that gave messages on nutrition, but then also sustainability. So the idea of pork is good for you, pork is good for the planet, because we have large studies that show the land use, water use, carbon footprint reduction of farmers and our producers and what's happened there. But then also food heritage, bringing that to life for them as well. The nice thing is it wasn't just an in-school element. We gave them parent letters, etc. So in the first 4 weeks, we had 1,000 plus downloads. In the second 4 weeks, we had over 60% activation with this. And Young Minds Inspired said it was one of the more successful programs, and they took it to 100,000 other teachers and went into science classrooms and other areas because that's where kids are. It's not just about sustainability from a food solution standpoint. It's about sustainability from an environment standpoint, health from a scientific standpoint as well. So we've really touched on something here, and we're looking at ways that we can continue to expand on that. So again, we've touched a lot on Dinner at Home in America and how we're kind of activating there. Also this year, we've done 2 other large studies, one on All About Dining Out. So taking the same type of methodology, but looking at food service and the dining out occasions. What does that look like? What are the motivations there? And then finally, we wanted to do a deep dive on the Latino and Hispanic consumer group because of the importance of that consumer group, the amount that they're spending, and what can we do to activate for that group, especially as multiculturalism expands beyond just one small segment. It's really becoming a part of what we work with every day. So again, all these studies are available out on our website, as well as white papers on generational comparisons. And then we did a white paper early on in the year on Latino consumers as well. That was a start for the larger study. So all that information is there. If you download the reports, you can also opt in for some weekly newsletters where we focus in on each of these topics a little bit more on a weekly basis with different types of stories or information that can really dig deeper into all the areas. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions, or if I need to use an alarm clock to wake people up because I know I can be boring. I bore myself, so 10 minutes. All right, I have 10 minutes left. So questions? Yes.
What can you do in a 5-second video?
What can we do in a 5-second video? Well, I can tell you this. So the Pork Board has worked hard on social media, and we've actually worked with YouTube, where we, has anyone ever heard of Good Mythical Morning, Rhett and Link?
Yes.
Okay. So popular group, they do some fun things. We sponsored a video with them. I want to say it was 20 minutes, so it was a little bit longer than 5 seconds. But the 20-minute video had 14 million views. It was the number 12 trending video on YouTube for a while. And so and what they did, they actually said, will it grill? And they took different pork cuts and different ways to cook. So got a watermelon, hollowed out the watermelon, made a grill top out of the watermelon, and grilled pork chops on the watermelon. It grilled to 145 degrees, tasted phenomenal. My son had a watch party with it, and then they made me go buy the products, and they cooked it at home, and it was probably some of the best pork ever because of the watermelon taste. But those sorts of fun things where you can really say, it's not just about providing the facts all the time in that 5-second splash. You have to tie a fact to emotion very, very quickly. And that's where the emotion doesn't have to be talked about. It can be the visuals. And so really thinking about how consumers are acting, because when I worked for P&G and did neuro research, we'd sit there again with the EEG monitors and the neuroscientists sitting in the room. Most people don't have filters until about the half-second area. So if we're able to use visuals in a way that can impact their emotions before they cognitively understand the message that's on the screen, I'll use the Cheerios example. 1/60th of the residue, for instance, that's a fact. But if you have an emotional linkage before that, that's going to resonate longer and more deeply with consumers. And so it's a matter of having that balance, but you do look at social media, that 5 to 7, 10 seconds is about all that you have before people flip onto the next thing. So it's very much a hot media society that we have. Yes?
Any other general suggestions for us? That we're trained on facts. We're trained on science. We like to dispense a lot of information. We're not so good at the emotional side of it. So you, I think, have made the case when you go out researching, most of the data, though, that you kind of put up there, we can't afford access to. So what tips would you have for emotional-based messaging where it doesn't feel like we're trying to be tricky?
Sure.
And stay factual.
So I'll say that a lot of the research that we've done, and that's why when we publish studies like this, we try and bring a lot of the data together. And so it's out on our website. If there's additional questions you have or additional data that you would want, please ask, and we'll figure out what we can do. So we don't want that to be a hindrance as far as having the correct facts. We're actually investigating further what that emotional tie-in. So I don't have a good answer right now, but we understand kind of that same thing. How do we tie into that emotion? Because it has to be a trusted source, which is fact-based, but how do we tie into that emotional message? And we're working really hard over the next couple months on the consumer interview side. That's why we just did the shop-alongs, and we're going a little bit deeper to understand that emotional side as well. So more to come in 2020. Yes?
Just a couple learnings you can share from your Hispanic research?
Sure. So there really were 3 elements to impact Hispanic consumers. One is accessibility. So having preferred cuts in retail. So Hispanic consumers are willing to go to 3 to 4 different stores in order to find what they want. So if they're looking for a very thin slice of ham to make a certain dish that's traditional and from their heritage, they're willing to go to multiple stores to find that product. So having the right products available in the store will help them not have to leave that store and potentially eliminate some of the basket. Authenticity. So making sure that it's products that appeal to their heritage as well. And so some of that could be as simple as the signage and labels and things having Spanish on there on the labels as well. But then also understanding the demographics of the consumers that you're looking at in a certain area. Not, I'll say, we can't bucket everyone into Hispanic or Latino buckets. We look at the demographics by region of the country. New York has a strong Puerto Rican population. Florida with Cuban, etc. And so how do you dig into that a little bit? What's some of that vernacular that you use? So those are some of the big takeaways that we have. I think the Hispanic consumers as well. We mentioned the health barrier that all consumers have. Hispanics and Latino consumers, that health barrier is even a little bit higher. And so how do we work with that as well and help to mitigate that barrier. Yes?
Has any of your research looked at how to make the supermarket more friendly for the consumer? I often shake my head and say, why isn't there a recipe of the day, and here's everything you need right there. You grab the recipe, you grab the tortillas, you grab the pork for the fajitas, you grab it, and you dive out the store. And I don't want to meal because that's cost prohibitive for me and most of my clients.
Right.
Are they looking at anything about restructuring grocery stores? How they're like, I don't want to wander through the milk aisle to get my bananas. I want it to be fast, and I want to minimize my time and get out.
So, as I said, we're working on the emotional side, but also some of the work that we're doing is, what are those pain points and what are those gaps that exist today? So we're looking at current shopping patterns, what are those gaps, what are those pain points, and then we're going to work to really develop some of the concepts. And so that'll be coming out in 2020 throughout the year, and then 2021, we'll really going to have a big finding come out of that. That said, there are retailers that do it very well already. And I would use Publix as an example down in the southeast. Publix, Publix. And they have, I forget the name, I was just there. I forget the name of the kiosk that they have in the front. But they have someone doing a demo, and usually it's a couple times during the week. But they have the recipe card there, they have all the nutrition facts, all the ingredients are on both sides, both the fresh and the center store ingredients are all right there. So they've actually built a refrigerated case that they can put the packs of meat or produce, center store, all right there, and they do give alternatives. So again, a meal kit is hard for some people because there could be allergens or what have you. They give suggestions of what to use in place of something that works. And I think we've heard this morning, testing those recipes and such.
Large recipes. The population's aging, they can't read those little recipe cards.
Right, and so when I say recipe cards, it actually is, I don't know, 5x7, 4x6 card. That is on both, that's on both sides of it. No, that's nice. So that's a good example, but yes, we are working to come up with some more ideas. I think I am out of time, but certainly if there are any questions, I'll be around for a couple minutes. Happy to have side conversations or stay in touch with myself, Adria, who you all probably worked with in past, is in the office as well, and Joyce. So thank you very much for the time this morning.